Previously on Mighty Car Mods, we flew into Japan to pick up an absolutely mint Nissan S30, also known as a 240Z. After taking it for a drive through the countryside, we then put it through its paces at Suzuka Twin, and then shipped the car back to Australia. But unbeknownst to us at the time, because of our asbestos laws, we were not able to bring the engine, gearbox or brakes. So we're going to be converting the car with an RB26 out of a Nissan Skyline GTR. And today, the build continues. Our good friend Benny has arrived, who along with Al was born into some kind of mechanical master race, and the mechanical Stig has brought some gifts. Now today is all about the engine, modifying it, servicing it, and most importantly, making sure we can fit it in the 240Z. Our first job of the day is changing the position of the factory dipstick. Because we're using a new sump, we need to hammer this one out and then reposition it on the block and drill out a new hole. Now this part is left to the professionals because let's face it, when you're drilling into your engine, getting that wrong would be a pretty big deal.
With that done, the engine oil filter location is getting a birthday and we can move on to prepping the engine bay. We're removing the factory brake lines and we'll remake them later. We're pulling out any wiring and the 70s style electronics that we're no longer going to need. With that out of the way, I can get the engine rails painted up. We've got some colour match paint in a spray can that we'll lay onto the prepared surface. It's a good match for the outside, but the engine bay is a lot more thrash, so it's dirty and grot. The whole bay will get a paint job down the track once everything is fabricated and finished. I'm also treating any small areas where the paint has been damaged, like in the seams or around where the factory brake booster sits, which we're replacing with one out of a Hilux as it's a correct size, will work with the car, and it's 40 years newer.
The dipstick is a perfect fit. So with that hammered in, now it's time to bring in our gearbox.
This is a gearbox, everybody. This is from a R34 GTT. 5-speed, right, Benny?
Yeah, 5-speed.
GTRs had 6-speed though, didn't they?
In R34 they did, yeah.
Yeah.
But
this is what we need because we're going rear-wheel drive, correct?
Yeah.
We need to marry it up to the engine. We need to offer it up and then marry it up.
We need to propose it, Martin.
One of the most challenging parts of this build is going to be the custom sump and oil feed configuration. But before we can even get into those details, we need to temporarily check the fitment of the engine and gearbox to make sure that everything is going to fit where we need it to, so we can measure it up for our custom engine mounts.
Alan, our engine is in, and that looks like it was always meant to be there.
Yeah, it fits pretty good. It's probably no surprise since it's came out as a 6-cylinder, straight 6.
It's got a really long nose, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. It's good.
So what do we...
Heaps of room.
In your experience of doing this kind of stuff, do you think it's going to be challenging or not challenging, or what are we going to have to do?
So far, I'd say it's going to be fairly straightforward.
Yep.
It's there's plenty of room and everything's sort of in the right place.
Yep.
Just the sump is probably the hardest thing for us.
We've still got to chop that up, right?
Yeah, we've just got to chop it up a bit.
The other thing is we have this intake manifold, which is made by Hypertune. Those legends lent us a mock-up version, so this is just one they use for prototyping or whatever, so we've whacked that on. Then the one we're actually getting from them, they're making it at the moment, the intake goes there, so that'll fit better. What we also don't have yet is a exhaust manifold, turbo manifold, but that's on its way.
Plenty of room.
You think it'll be all right?
Yep.
Awesome.
You'll be able to see the turbo at night with this light as well. Would be sick.
With the engine bay light.
You put like a red
Ibiza light
globe in there. Yeah. Ibiza light.
So this has to come out again, doesn't it? So we're going to just mock up
one or two times.
Yeah. So we're at the stage now of mocking up mounts.
Yeah. We're going to try get it mounted. So we've got wooden stuff chocked in everywhere. RBs are a pain in the butt because they're on like a tilt, and it's just.
And we're going to mount it on the
unnatural. So you got to sort of flatten out the gearbox, and then wherever the engine sits, that's the tilt.
So the gearbox is level, but the engine's sort of sits.
Yeah, the engine's tilted.
Leans that way.
It's just a Nissan thing.
Okay.
I think the L series engine that was in it was the other way.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't know why they do that, but that's how they are.
So engine mounted, manifolds, plumbing, fuel system, radiator,
All those things.
heaps. ECU, wiring, yeah, there's heaps to do.
Using a technical positioning device known as a piece of wood, we can slowly adjust the engine into position until we're happy, and once that's done, we can start fabricating the engine mounts.
We're going to adapt the new engine onto the factory engine mount so that the swap is reversible and so there's little vibration and harshness as you may get with solid mounting. We're using steel plate and thick wall tube, and we're drilling out the plate to fit the RB26 bolt pattern. They are then test fitted, drilled, test fitted again, and can then be welded into their final position.
This is somewhat important. Don't mess it up.
What could possibly go wrong?
No pressure.
Welding. Welding. What do you say?
Good job, Benny. You getting the nod?
Needs more amperage.
See if we get the nod.
This will put more heat into it.
No nod. More heat required.
You're more heat.
Yep. I just don't want to get it out and it goes ting. Welding again. Better.
Sounds powerful.
Yeah, that's better. It was biting straight in then.
Nice. So we tack it and then pull it out and weld it properly. Sounds like an ibis.
Al, can you tell us about what we're going to do to mount our gearbox, considering that we can't actually weld anything to this?
Yeah, so we're going to clamp some plates along the inside of the sides of the tunnel. You can weld to this, but it's everything will catch on fire and you pull all the interior out, so it's quite a bit of extra work. So what we're just going to use like mating plates, and then one will be on the inside of the tunnel with studs poking through it, and the other will be on the outside here, and then it'll just have a little ledge welded onto it. And then we'll use this, which is the R34 cross member. So it's all sort of factory stuff. That'll just go like that.
And then just bolt that on.
And then, yeah, those will be bolted in there, but they'll pretty much just stay there once they're in there, so it'll be a permanent sort of thing. Tail shaft is not very long, and we got the front half.
Have you ever seen a shorter one?
No.
So Al, we're just under the car and the gearbox was in place, but there was no jack under it.
Yeah.
Have you got some voodoo to keep it in place?
Yeah, it was hovering like some sort of holy being. Not really. This is a little trick that I used when I'm mounting stuff like this. We basically, normally you've got a shifter assembly here of some description, so there's bolts holding it on. So we just back out a bolt and get a long bolt and a bar. Sometimes at home I just use a piece of wood, just drill a hole through it, and you just run it down, and you can use the bolt to set the height of the gearbox.
Genius.
And it just keeps everything out of the way underneath, because you're in and out underneath. You've either got to put a jack under it, or when I'm on a hoist, you'd have to have
like a long stand.
Yeah, something like that to hold it up, and it just gets in the way. So this just holds it there, and that can stay there until you've done all your fabrication, and it's going to support its own weight. Then you just back that bolt out and stick the original one back in, and it's all good.
Amazing.
So yeah, it's a handy tip for if you're trying to do stuff like this.
So once we finish that bracket that's actually going to hold the gearbox in, then the engine can come back out.
Yep.
And then I got to put a clutch in it.
Yep. So we've also we've got to put the clutch in. We've got to do the sump, which is kind of going to be a bit of work. We've got to shorten the sump because it's a patrol one. We've also got to make a new pickup because there's a bit of stuff going on with the pickup because it's got dual pickup castings and it's using the wrong one because it's a 4-drive engine. So we have to make a custom one. And then it's just all got to go back together, glued on. Then we can put it back in for good. So,
Wow. A big job. I'm very lucky to have you here and this bearded gentleman as well. This is a really great solution as it requires minimal changes to the car. Once the plates are positioned, we can drop the engine down on the jack and see how it's sitting on its new mounts. It's looking amazing, so now we can take the engine and gearbox back out of the car. Now we can take off the gearbox and remove the RD sump, which has been measured up and marked and is now ready to get chopped. The plan is to reuse this bottom section by simply cutting it off and then removing a strip to make the whole thing shorter.
While our two mechanical mates are sorting the sump, we're going to put new timing gear into our RB.
So this is where we're at. The engine has been test fit and the mounts, that's the tricky bit, that's the bit that requires some maths and some trial and error. That is all done. So next up, we're going to do a bit of a, would you call that a major service, Martin?
Yeah, it's servicing. It makes sense to do it now when it's out on the stand. It's so much easier.
Some of the stuff that you're meant to be able to access while this is in a car is just ridiculous. So we're doing the timing belt, we're doing the water pump, and then there's, speaking of umps, there's some epic sump action going on.
So
over
we've
there,
got our RD28 diesel sump, which fits. The bolt pattern is the same, which is awesome, but it fouls slightly on this oil pickup line. So we have to modify that to make that fit. We have to modify the oil pickup. They're slicing a bit off the sump to get it to fit in the car. And then once that goes on and our timing belt and everything's in, the engine can go in for the last time. Stick a clutch on it as well.
Yep. Then we've got to do all the other kind of normal bits and pieces like spark plugs, oil,
coolant.
Then get the radiator happening, front mount, turbo, manifold,
it's funny,
all that stuff.
You go, doing timing belt's hard until you're doing a timing belt in the car with no room.
Yeah.
This is a bit of a luxury, actually.
Sure is. All right, let's get to it. This is a second-hand engine, so now's a really good time to inspect the condition of some of the components. Changing the timing belt and water pump and associated parts would be an absolute nightmare once the engine is in the car, so it's much easier to do it now.
There it
You're
goes.
getting there, man. Well done.
Yeah, it just doesn't want to come off because it's got a dowel in it to keep it in the perfect spot.
Yeah, right.
Now I was saying that's because that holds the cam timing sensor. It has to be perfect.
Yeah, right.
Otherwise your timing's out.
Good stuff. Can you help me finger bang this?
Yep.
If I bash it on this side, can you insert from that side?
Yep.
Stick it in as far as you can, and then just try and pry it
Yeah, I
open
reckon if
while
I
bang from this side.
Yeah, if I get it open.
Do you want to hammer that in?
Yeah,
with
that'd
that?
be good.
And then I'll hammer it from this side.
Yep.
There's a lot of goo in there, isn't there?
Yeah, so much goo. Like someone's been here before and really sprayed it everywhere, haven't they?
They have. Doesn't look like anyone's been here for a while though, because it's all dried up around the edges of
it
it.
has. Yeah, it's kind of solidified a little bit.
Maybe I just need to give it a few big,
Yeah, I don't think it'd
few
hurt.
big hits.
That worked. That worked beautifully. We needed to get a new thermostat too. We can scrape all this off and whiz it off with the little whizzer.
Shave it.
Yeah, there's a...
Shave all the goo off the lips of it.
Yeah, get the razor blade and then just make it so it's totally bare.
Yeah, cool. So when you're buying a car or you're buying an engine from overseas, you never really know what you're going to get. And so we thought we'd kind of go all out, do the timing belt, do the water pumps. It actually looks like this is new and in really good condition. And the timing belt muddy is like
looks like it's only days old, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
this is the old one's got a little bit of shiny stuff on it, but it's not nearly as bad as some of the ones I've seen.
All right, look at that. But that said,
It's not that expensive.
we could have not gone through this and the car would have been fine, but at least now we know. And the thing is, when you're going to keep a car for a long time or forever, it's good to know exactly what's going on, and at least we know that it's done and that it's done right as we can. What's next, man?
We're going to pull these off.
To keep our engine looking as clean as possible, we're removing any parts that we don't need, like these metal hardlines and the various vacuum and boost hoses running around the front of the engine. Next, we can scrub off any of the old sealant and then install our new water pump. To install the new timing belt, we need to align the pulleys with the marks on the castings on the side of the engine. These marks will then match up to the lines that are printed on the timing belt. It needs to be perfectly matched, as this governs when the valves will open. Get it wrong and best case your car won't make power, worst case things will touch that aren't meant to touch and you'll be looking for a new RB26.
To accommodate the new sump, we need to change the location of the oil pickup. This one is being custom made by Benny and Al using parts from 3 different kinds of cars. Now that the sump has been roughly chopped and the oil pickup relocated, we can start test fitting it to see what other mods will be required to make it all fit. It's been another huge day working on the 240Z, and the sump is almost sorted, and it has been a huge job. But next time on Mighty Car Mods, we pick up our turbocharger.